So when Crowley is talking about magic, the science and art of causing change to occur in conformity of the will, how do you make sense of that? Well, one thing I wanted to add about Boehm, he said, um, in order to reach God, and again, um, he was a Christian Kabbalist. He was, in fact, a Lutheran Kabbalist. And this was sort of a unique time in which people were holding both views together, as tricky as it might have seemed, because Kabbalism is very elastic in many ways. Um, but in order to reach God, man has to go through hell first. And when we talked about the Sabbatean Frankists, this is this idea that in order for the Messiah to come, the world has to be all good or all bad. So, well, let's degrade humanity and sort of that yin yang. We have to sort of exhaust one thing to have the world collapse upon itself. It's an extremely Kabbalistic notion. And when our minds get around the idea that the dominant oligarchy in the world is literally spending their money to grade society in order to bring about their Messiah, I think most people just have a little bit of trouble getting their heads around that one. But again, the science and art of causing change. And one idea that we can think of within Kabbalists is that at the foundation of their belief system, God is an infinite sea of being. He is without limits, hence without qualities, without desire or will of any kind. This is in contradistinction to the biblical God who starts out, he exists outside of creation and he creates everything whole cloth, right? Um, he is totally incomprehensible. So you have a God without qualities that can't be comprehended. This is a reading from the Meaning of Jewish History, page 268. Okay. And so, we're getting the formation of the possibility of, as Crowley would say, bending the world around our will, because if the God has no qualities, we can sort of be a stand in for that God and create in his stead. So Kabbalists in this way share that same quality, or arguably are Satanists who, in a sense, because God is absent, they will be God. Their reality is their self-interest. They think God, they can then channel the will of God. Okay. And I'll give you a modern example of this. Karl Rove, after 9/11, he was the PR person for Bush, and he made this public statement. And it's very Kabbalistic. He's saying that's not the way the world works anymore. We're an empire now, and when we act, we create our own reality judiciously, as you will. Then we'll act again, creating other new realities, which you can study too. And that's how things will sort out. We're history's actors, and you will, all of you, will be left to just study what we do. This is not an accidental view of history. He's putting it out there. This is the externalization of the hierarchy. This is the time of revelation. He's putting it out there. This is what you're reading in the history books is what we've been doing. We're giving you the show. We put your idols out there for you. And he's just kind of revealing a little revelation of the method there. So again, with the idea of this magic or this Kabbalistic kind of magic, it takes a tremendous amount of mind control to conceive humanity, to want to see things. It takes a tremendous amount of mind control to convince humanity not to want to see things. So not to even want to go there and click on the button and deconstruct our heroes or deconstruct our theories or narratives. We just don't want to go there in the first place. Why? Because biopolitics, we've internalized the messages that they sent. We are our own policemen. So we somehow have this feeling that emotionally we can't step across that boundary. Okay. And we don't, but for the most part, we can safely say then here magic, because magic isn't just a ritual. It is in part a ritual, spirit of summoning, but it's altering the perception of reality as well. So it's the two together. So this is from Henry Makow, and he's saying that fake news has become an issue because public information and instruction today are controlled by a people. And I think Henry's very good at making the Kabbalah accessible to people. So I'm giving you his slant on that. Kabbalistic Jewish bankers whose religion is to lie and deceive, they believe that perception is reality. He's talking about Talmudic Kabbalistic Jews right now. Thinking is believing, and saying so makes it true. And again, this includes the Masonic tradition and everybody else working with this cabal of Kabbalists. They claim to channel God's will. That's kind of like what Crowley was talking about in Boehm, and create solipsism that reflects their insane megalomania and avarice. They have applied the term fake news to internet sites which try to discern truth. Thus, they flip reality, making truth false and false true. Inversion. Okay, so we're going to now dig into the ultimate inversion psyop called Pizzagate. But before I continue, this very idea that Constitution of the United States at its forefront with these strong free individuals is all about the freedom to speak against the powers that be. It's a freedom of the press to write about the powers that be, to speak truth to power. It's about having guns so we have some kind of enforcement of our own to speak truth to power. When we've become so broken down biopolitically by the oligarchy that we feel internally that we're doing something wrong, to question a narrative that they're feeding us because it might offend somebody, then the Constitution itself can exist, but it's meaningless because through these mental manipulation of we've made it something that ourselves we won't act upon. So let's look and think just a moment about mainstream news. So by all accounts, oligarchs have always controlled the information. We could say in the United States, there was perhaps a period of more independent presses in the 19th century. Certainly, if you go back to, my review of the chains of public opinion and the chains of media, certainly by the turn of the 19th and 20th century, when Pulitzer and Hertz were buying up all the publications around the country and creating this sort of mono model of getting your news, it was all but dead in the entire 20th century. But factually speaking, when we look at what was going on with the Church Committee in the 19th century, it was revealed that the intelligence services, lock, stock, and barreled, controlled all the major news services. That was put out there in a congressional hearing. We're not taught that. We can go investigate it if you want to go there and click a button in the first place and look up the church hearings or look up Project Mockingbird or Operation Mockingbird. And when it was revealed, it was said it's like a Wurlitzer. We control all the publications. We can play the different keyboards on that organ. We can play the left. We can play the right. We can play the West Coast. We can play the East Coast. We can play a lot of different tunes, but it's one organ. And this wasn't unique to the United States. This is going on around. So that's the fact about mainstream media. More recently, it's been revealed that everybody signs essentially an entertainment contract, and it really functions essentially operatively just like all other entertainment organs. So it has no obligation to give you free and fair information regardless of what it says. So that's the fact of the matter about the mainstream media. And you could look back like, what was going on here at the time. This is just a little side note right here. But in the construction of the OSS, sort of the precursor of the USA at that time, the intelligence agencies were taking control. And this is Cold War era, but it's much deeper than that. It's really about controlling bodies, minds, and spirits. But it connects back to Nazi Germany. The intelligence agents over there after the war came over here, not only helped start uh, the CIA, but started the control of the information and taking it to a new level using their techniques in Nazi Germany. And you're thinking, isn't that strange? We know about Project Paperclip, and we know, they maybe were coming over here designing rockets. No, they came over here and used their tools of propaganda to crank it up a notch here in terms of the propaganda and the mind control in the United States. But where this gets even more wild. And I found this out years ago during my own primary research, during my dissertation on this topic. But the same Nazi intelligence apparatus, the same operators, the intelligence operators that came here, many also went to the Soviet Union and contributed to propaganda and rocket building over there. But they actually went to Israel to start out the Mossad, Israeli intelligence. That's how deep this goes. Okay. So that's just how deep this goes, this world system of mind control. But Operation Mockingbird, you can see that it controlled all the major newspapers, televisions, magazines, as CIA Director William Colby testified during the Church Committee. Here's a few accessible reads if you want to look into that a little bit more regarding the mighty Wurlitzer. But we've all been told recently that all the news services essentially are controlled by 6 corporations, and now more recently they're saying 3. I've argued in this course through interlocking directories, there is really one corporation when you get down to it. So even that's somewhat of an illusion. So look at this statement by the director of the CIA in 1981, William Casey. We'll know our disinformation program is complete when everything the American public believes is false. So, okay, that's mainstream media. When we've hoodwinked everybody, when we've given them a fake Kabbalistic worldview, inverted everything. So, we're going to juxtapose that now with researchers on the internet that are trying to make sense of this or walk to the back of the cave and see what's going on. Because we know that the internet was set up as a surveillance grid that's going to eventually collect all consciousness, but at the same time with that web it also supplies a few people with the vantage point of examining events in the world. So we got to think, like, if there is this mighty Wurlitzer, are there possibilities to get outside of the web of the Wurlitzer? So let's go back to the fall of 2016. Presidential election. Hillary looks like the shoe-in. The final phase of this election, there's these leaks. There's these leaks. And it ultimately seems to be what officially seems to have sunk her campaign or victory. And I don't know if there's the Russians that provided these leaks, but it's all kind. How do you make sense of this? How do you make sense of Pizzagate? Okay, so if we were in the university, if you're teaching this to students, what do you have to talk about? Well, it's got to take place in the democratic process. Somehow these people we're talking about, we elected, and these are the people we deserve, and they're going to help give us our laws and create our world. Okay, so democratic process, national level. So it's not, for the most part, going to be disconnected to some kind of other broader power base in the world with other agendas. Accidental world of accidental view. It's just one damn thing after another, willy nilly. Don't you dare try to connect any of these events, one thing to another. Okay. And of course, it's materialism. So we can't really make sense of the esoteric piece of what might be happening here. Um, Okay, but most importantly at the university, or the information we're getting on mainstream, is that mainstream is trustworthy. Okay, if you want real news, you go to the mainstream. That's reinforced. It's on all the syllabuses. What's a good source? Go to New York Times, et cetera, et cetera. And that although politicians lie, we trust the political process. So it's kind of somewhat confining view of history. So let's go to one of their sources, Wikipedia. Begins not just, you can't just hear it as like what happened. It's called the Pizzagate conspiracy theory, and it begins like this. Pizzagate is a debunked conspiracy theory that went viral in 2016. So I don't have to read anymore. You get it. So it's debunked. Don't read about it. Okay, and they cite a few sources. Okay. In addition, on Wikipedia, they're going to show you, all this stuff seems kind of like funny. The name ping pong, and it's a fictitious child sex ring. And so if one doesn't investigate outside of the mainstream and you hear about that, it does sound far-fetched. And then, of course, on top of this, you have the old lone gunman, um, fake news incites armed. So, okay, so people that get their news outside of the mainstream are going to be Looney Tune, and B, at the same time, they got guns, so we can kind of take two things, take care of two things: the gun situation and people watching. See it hooking all these things together. I don't know if there's that much magic even involved. You just sort of uh, the magic is that you've allowed people to have these their internal policemen that they won't go and investigate, because if you dare speak about this to somebody at work, family, or friends, you'll be socially ostracized, just like if you challenge um, who any of their idols are. um, and then to add a bit of confusion, that the president of the United States gets up and calls one of the major news networks fake news. So you're going, okay, so he's kind of with the internet crowd. So it kind of just throws a little bit more confusion into the situation. But what I am interested in here, so at one time, the powers that be, the mainstream media, the university, they're telling us this is a debunked conspiracy nut job story. Then the other side, the same mainstream media, is leaking out these pictures of this guy who looks a little weird, and he's doing kind of what's with the numbers and the symbols and the weird look on your face. And then we do in fact find out, well, he was invited to these parties with this woman. And so then they want you to know this. Okay, so it's a debunked story, but then you're seeing these images. So regular folk are seeing, like, with a sharp knife cut deeply. It's like, what is that? What is that? And so they're kind of telling, nothing to see here, but look at this. So you're seeing, you know, I mean, these images. What do So what do you make of this? If you only see the world of the democratic process, and history's an accident and everything's material, what do you make of this? Well, you make of it what the media tells you to make of it. It's art. It's art. Don't you get it? It's art. Are you stupid? It's art. And then on top of that, they bring the idols back into it. So anybody's hanging out with this woman, and because it's art, and it's normal. Sex with children. Oh, yeah. It's trendy. It's trending. Drinking blood. It's trending. It's cool. It's cool. It's cool. So they're externalizing the hierarchy. What they're doing, they're creating doublethink. It's true, but it's not true. And we're left with these pictures, these Podesta pictures. That, can you imagine going to a dinner party and seeing these images hanging on someone's wall? Um, but it's cool. It's cool. It's art. So This is very disturbing stuff. Fake news, dares. If you go on the internet, you're one of those crazy people. Next, you're going to be questioning whether this is art. And I just want to leave here with, another saying, a quote by Meko. This is what Satanism is. It's why the Kabbalah is essentially that kind of doctrine. Everybody says, well, it's not real. Yeah. So, what it's all about, turning reality upside down. This is the esoteric meaning of revolution, making evil seem good, sick seem healthy, ugly seem beautiful, false seem true. There is a war going on that Dr. Deep State has talked about in biopolitical terms. There's a war going on for your mind, body, and spirit, your soul. When we differentiate, and this is what I've argued from the beginning, between good and evil, that we realize that we are victims of a pernicious ancient conspiracy. Okay, that's if you'll take that lonely road, which I don't know. Not many of us want to do. So I want to leave with a few words here from Dee, one of the respondents. Um, she's saying, in short, what are some of the, practical things? Talk to people, get off your phone. She's warning us about the 5G. You don't have to be one of those internet people. Just look at the facts of the amount of radiation that thing's going to do to save you, a fraction of a second of time. So, there is a whole new way. This is going beyond the surveillance state, what seems to be coming in. But what Dee's saying here is we have to change our mindsets. And, it's so funny how so many of these things, about stop being jealous, stop being materialistic, get in touch with nature. But so many of these things, it really is a battle, I've argued in cosmic terms, between these two forces. One that wants to heave these idols on you, that wants you to be your own God, that ones that want you to covet, versus a God that wants you to resist those forces. So I've argued throughout real politics is a body of our minds and spirits, and I'm trying to reveal some of the methods. They do a pretty good job of revealing their own methods these days. So sometimes there's not that much to work. There's not that much to reveal. It's all on the table. It's a matter of if we can allow ourselves to stop policing ourselves, to earnestly want to seek truth, to earnestly look toward a new type of liberation. So that's a little bit about magic and fake news, the ultimate psyop inversion. So thanks again for joining Dr. Deep State.